After a collision with an asteroid, the space station was destroyed, leaving only one survivor, a female astronaut stranded alone in outer space. She is running out of oxygen and has no communication with Earth. How will she survive? The story begins in Earth's orbit, where research astronaut Ryan Stone is repairing a telescope aboard the Shuttle Explorer. This is her first mission, but under the guidance of veteran astronaut Matt Kowalski, she feels confident. When Dr. Stone struggles to fix the issue quickly, Kowalski steps in, lightening the mood with jokes to ease the tension. Houston then informs the astronauts that a rocket has collided with a Russian satellite, sending debris hurtling through space at incredible speeds. Initially, it appears the debris won't affect the Explorer, so the astronauts continue to enjoy the view of Earth, unaware of the approaching threat. Suddenly, Houston orders them to abort the mission and return to the shuttle, as debris from the satellite has damaged other spacecrafts and is now headed toward them at bullet-like speeds. Ryan hesitates, and the astronauts don't make it back to the shuttle in time. The satellite debris smashes into the shuttle, cutting off communication with Houston. Dr. Stone is flung into space, gripping a part of the ship that detaches. Panicked and terrified, she drifts further away, unable to respond to Kowalski, who is trying to communicate with her via walkie-talkie. However, she soon regains her composure and provides him with her location. Kowalski uses a custom rocket engine to fly to her, and once they're together, reminds her to conserve her remaining oxygen. Kowalski tethers their suits together and pulls Ryan back toward the shuttle. Without communication from Houston, they have no idea what awaits them aboard the Explorer. Dr. Stone sets a 90-minute timer, knowing that the debris will complete an orbit and collide with the shuttle again in that time. Ryan's oxygen levels drop to 6% by the time they reach the Explorer, only to discover that the rest of the crew didn't survive. Bodies of the other astronauts float around the wreckage. Dr. Stone blames herself for their deaths, believing her delay in repairing the telescope caused the tragedy, but Kowalski reassures her that the collision was inevitable. After surveying the damage, Kowalski decides their only chance of survival is to make their way to the nearby International Space Station, ISS, though it's not close. With her oxygen nearly depleted, Ryan agrees with his plan. As they journey toward the ISS, Kowalski tries to comfort and distract her with conversation. This is his final space mission before retirement, but the experienced astronaut remains calm and lighthearted. He jokes that he still plans to break the record for the most time spent in space. Dr. Stone, though terrified, reluctantly engages in conversation, revealing a painful part of her life. She shares that no one is waiting for her on Earth, as her 4-year-old daughter tragically died after hitting her head while playing. Since then, Ryan has been going through life on autopilot, performing tasks without feeling any real joy. After this emotional confession, Dr. Stone reports that she has only 1% of oxygen left. Kowalski urges her to stay calm and breathe slowly, reminding her that the ISS is just 5 minutes away. However, upon reaching the station, Kowalski realizes that it too has been hit by space debris and is now out of order. The crew has abandoned it, and the only remaining Soyuz spacecraft is unfit for a return to Earth. Despite this, Kowalski believes the Soyuz could reach the nearby Chinese station, Tiangong. With the fuel in Kowalski's jetpack running low, he jokes that Russian vodka might work as fuel. As they make a difficult landing on the ISS, they try to grab onto anything for stability, but the tether connecting them breaks. Now separated, there is little they can do for each other. Dr. Stone is flung far from the station, but her leg gets caught on the lines of the spaceship's parachute. Kowalski is also sent drifting away from the ISS, but at the last second, Ryan catches him by his suit's cable. She promises to pull him back, but Kowalski realizes that the parachute lines can't support both of them. He urges her to let him go. Though she pleads with him not to leave her alone, Kowalski decides to sacrifice himself for Ryan's survival. He unhooks his carabiner, freeing himself from the tether. Believing she can make it on her own, he floats away into space. In despair, Ryan's oxygen is completely depleted. Kowalski, still in communication, calmly instructs her on how to enter the ISS. Though she wants to rescue him, he gently advises her to let go and focus on her own survival. He mentions, with a final joke, that he will now definitely break the record as he admires the beauty of Earth before their connection is lost. With great difficulty, Ryan reaches the station's hatch. Once inside, she removes her spacesuit and takes deep breaths, feeling relatively safe for the first time. She tries to contact Kowalski by radio, but there is no response. Houston is also silent, leaving her utterly alone. Suddenly, a fire breaks out inside the station. Stone fights to extinguish it, But the flames spread rapidly. In a last-ditch effort, she seals off the burning compartment just before it explodes. Ryan rushes to the control cabin and attempts to make sense of the instructions written in Russian. She has never flown a Soyuz spacecraft before, only practiced on a simulator back on Earth. Nevertheless, she successfully undocks the ship from the station and starts moving forward. However, the Soyuz parachute lines have gotten tangled with the ISS, preventing the spacecraft from moving. After several failed attempts to free the Soyuz, Dr. Stone realizes that she'll have to manually detach the lines. She puts her spacesuit back on and ventures out into space. Just then, her watch timer goes off, signaling that the deadly debris field has completed its orbit and is about to pass near the ISS again. She hopes she can finish the task in time and escape the station, but she's wrong. Debris starts striking the ISS, tearing apart various components. Despite the chaos, Ryan tries to stay calm and focused, but an explosion rocks the station, sending more debris flying. The ISS is almost completely destroyed. The Soyuz, which Ryan is holding onto, begins spinning rapidly out of control. It becomes increasingly difficult for her to stay close to the ship, but eventually, the Soyuz drifts away from the wreckage and its rotation slows down. Miraculously, Dr. Stone survives and manages to get back inside the spacecraft. Now seated at the controls, she sets a course for the Chinese Tiangong station. However, when she tries to start the Soyuz, she discovers it has run out of fuel. Overcome with despair, Ryan feels completely helpless. The temperature inside the cockpit drops, and she begins to freeze, barely able to move her fingers. In a final attempt, she tries to contact Houston, but instead picks up a signal from Earth, a man named Aningak. Ryan doesn't understand his language and knows he can't help her, but she finds comfort in hearing the barking of his dogs. Feeling utterly alone, Ryan shares her fears with Aningak, even though he can't understand her. She asks him to pray for her, and he responds by singing a lullaby to a child, which deeply moves Ryan. As she listens, she reflects on her daughter's death and begins to accept that she will soon join her. In a moment of resignation, Ryan turns off the oxygen supply to the cockpit, preparing for eternal sleep. Just as she is about to drift off, she hears a knock on the ship's window. To her shock, it's Kowalski, who has somehow survived. He enters the Soyuz, still joking and lighthearted as ever. He cheers her up, drinking imaginary Russian vodka and boasting that he has broken the record for the longest spacewalk. Kowalski suggests that the Soyuz could be launched without fuel by using the soft landing engines, but a hopeless Ryan isn't even willing to try. Sensing her exhaustion, Kowalski gently encourages her to come to terms with her daughter's death and remember that life is still worth living. It turns out that Kowalski's return was just a hallucination, but this imagined conversation gives Ryan the strength she needs. Renewed with purpose, she restores the oxygen supply to the cockpit, disconnects the Soyuz from the ISS modules, and sets the landing parameters on the control panel. At this point, Ryan turns to the memory of the deceased Kowalski, asking him to greet her daughter in the afterlife. She finally comes to terms with her child's death, and with love and determination, she gathers her strength to fight for her life. The Soyuz heads toward the deteriorating Tiangong station, which is rapidly losing altitude and about to enter Earth's atmosphere. Undeterred, Ryan resolutely declares, "Enough talking, let's go home." Ejecting from the Soyuz, she takes a daring risk, knowing she can't return to the Soyuz and that reaching the falling Tiangong will be difficult. Using only a fire extinguisher to propel herself, she maneuvers through space, but the extinguisher's charge is running out. Ryan carefully calculates her trajectory and finally reaches the Chinese station. At the last moment, she discards the empty extinguisher and grabs hold of the Tiangong's hull. Exhausted but determined, she makes her way toward the hatch, nearly losing her grip several times. With sheer willpower, she manages to open the hatch and climb inside. By now, the fragments of the Russian satellite have completed another orbit and catch up with her, but Ryan secures herself inside the Tiangong and seals the airlock. As she moves through the station, the space debris continues to tear it apart from the outside. She eventually reaches the control cabin, where all the buttons are labeled in Chinese. Despite this, Ryan refuses to despair. Trusting her instincts, she selects the right controls and successfully undocks the Shenzhou capsule from the station. Although no one can hear her, Ryan speaks to Houston, acknowledging that she faces two outcomes. Either she will survive to tell this incredible story, or she will be torn apart during re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. As the Shenzhou descends, she endures extreme turbulence, but Ryan has no regrets, ready to ride it out like the wind. Meanwhile, the station's outer parts have broken off, and flaming debris from the Tiangong rains down toward Earth. With the Shenzhou's control system heavily damaged, Ryan struggles to maintain control, but she manages to separate the capsule from the remaining modules and set up a soft landing. The wreckage speeds toward Earth, colliding and igniting in flames. The Shenzhou's outer shell begins to peel away, and a fire breaks out inside the cabin. As the capsule nears the ground, the parachute deploys for an emergency landing, just in time. Houston suddenly re-establishes contact, but the flaming ship crashes into a lake. Ryan doesn't respond to Houston. Her focus is entirely on escaping the fire and getting out. She opens the hatch, and water floods the cabin rapidly. Struggling to free herself from the sinking ship, she takes a deep breath and exits, but she can't reach the surface due to the weight of her suit. Ryan quickly sheds the heavy equipment and finally surfaces safely. As she looks up at the sky, she sees the burning wreckage of the Chinese station above her. Exhausted but determined, she swims to shore, grasping the earth in her hands, grateful for her survival. Ryan slowly pulls herself to her feet and smiles, finally understanding the true value of life. Filled with a deep sense of happiness and gratitude, she begins to walk forward, embracing her second chance at life.